What my husband asked James to asked of me as he said goodbye was, yeah, please don't go to the country house. Eliza, promise me. He squeezed my hand with the last vestiges of his strength, his eyes pleading. I promised him I always respected his wishes, even when curiosity consumed me. But a few years after his death, curiosity won out, and what I found on that property would change my life forever. Now I understand why my husband wanted so badly to keep me away from there. Stay with this story until the very last moment. The unending will astonish you. 17 years of marriage to James ended in a hospital bed after a sudden, massive stroke. No one could have predicted. At Yayafit, I found myself widowed with a daughter in college, and a sense of emptiness that seemed endless. As I sorted through his things, I discovered there was much more to my husband that I didn't know. It was an ordinary Tuesday when his attorneys, Mr. Ramirez, called me into his office. 2 months had already passed since the funeral. Life continued its cruel course of normalcy while I was still trying to figure out how to breathe without James nearby. Mrs. Eliza, there is something I must give you. Mr. Ramirez slid a small box and an envelope across his polished wooden desk. James left specific instructions for this to be delivered only after his passing. If you're watching this video, please, subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching my story of revenge from. I want to know how far it has reached. The box contained an antique, heavy key with a metal leaf-shaped key ring. The envelope had my name on it in James's unmistakable handwriting. What key is this? I asked, turning it over in my fingers. It's for a property in Lake Tahoe. Your husband bought it approximately 4 years ago, but left explicit instructions that you were only to know about it after his death. My heart raced. James had no other properties besides our homes in Denver. He never mentioned a country house. And more importantly, why would he make me promise never to go there, only to later reveal its existence? It's called the Parrots' Nook, the lawyer continued. Apparently, it was the house where James spent part of his childhood. He reacquired it after many years, even though it had changed hands several times. Wait, this doesn't make sense, I interrupted him. James always avoided talking about his childhood. When I mentioned Lake Tahoe, he would become tense and change the subject. Why would he buy a house there? Mr. Ramirez adjusted his glasses. I couldn't tell you, ma'am, but there is another important detail. The property has become extremely valuable in the last 2 years. How so? A large developer is building a luxury resort in the area. Your husband's property is strategically located. They have already made several million-dollar offers for the house. My head was spinning. James had never been wealthy. We lived comfortably on his salary as an engineer and mine as a university professor. But nothing that would allow him to buy a second house, especially in a place like Lake Tahoe. And why keep it a secret? With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope. My dearest Eliza, if you are reading this, it's because I left sooner than I expected. Forgive me for all the secrets I kept. The house is yours now. Over the past 4 years, I transformed that somber place from my childhood into something I hope you will consider beautiful. I know I made you promise never to go there. I am sad to unmaking that promise now. In fact, I ask that you go just once before deciding what to do with the property. In the house's study, you will find my laptop. The password is the date of our first meeting, followed by hope, the word you taught me to feel again. I love you more than I could ever express. James. I pressed the letter against my chest, tears blurring my vision. Even after leaving, James still had the power to surprise me. I need to see that place, I said, almost to myself. There's a complication, Mr. Ramirez interrupted. James's family is contesting the will. His brother and Robert alleges that James was not mentally competent when he bought the property. That's absurd. My husband was the most lucid and centered person I have ever known. Even so, they have filed legal resources. Considering the current value of the property, this could turn into a complicated battle. I slipped the key into my pocket, a sudden determination seizing me. I'm going to Lake Tahoe today. I truly wonder if you were in my place, what would you do? Would you choose to be quiet to maintain peace, or would you dare to face everything to reclaim your voice? I want to know your opinion because every story is like a candle that can light the way for someone else. 2 days later, after a hurried drive through the Sierra Nevada mountains, I parked in front of a carved wooden gate with the name, the Parrots Nook, in wrought iron. My heart pounded as I turned the key in the lock. The gate swung open with a soft creak, revealing a property much more impressive than I had imagined. It wasn't just a country house, it was a mansion of stone and wood, surrounded by impeccably maintained gardens and ancient ponderosa pines. A stone path snaked across perfect lawns to the main entrance. Everything looked new or recently renovated. Nothing there suggested the traumatic childhood James resisted discussing. This place had been transformed with love and dedication. My husband's hands were in every detail, even though I never knew of its existence until now. My hands trembled as I put the key in the front door. The lock turned with a satisfying click, and I stepped into the secret world of the man with whom I shared almost 2 decades of life. What I saw inside made me grab the door frame to keep myself steady. The entrance opened into a vast, 2-story living room with a stone fireplace. But it wasn't the architecture that took my breath away. It was the paintings. On every wall, in every available space, there were paintings of flowers. Not just any flowers, but orchids of every possible type and color. My lifelong passion, which James always supported with quiet affection, surrounded me in a gallery dedicated to my greatest loves. And there, on a table near the window overlooking the garden, sat a silver and a laptop, with a single white orchid placed on the lid. Before I could take another step, the sound of tires on the gravel announced that I was no longer alone. Through the window, I saw a black SUV parked behind mine. 3 men got out, all with James's unmistakable facial resemblance. The same straight nose, the same almond-shaped eyes. The Aunt Mendoza clan had arrived, and by the severe expressions on their faces, they were not here to welcome the widow to her newly discovered property. The men approached with the mad confidence of those who feel entitled to the place. I quickly closed the front door, my heart racing. I watched through the side window as they stopped on the porch, whispering among themselves before the eldest. A gray-haired version of James knocked hard. "Mrs. Eliza, we know you're in there. We need to talk." His voice had the same accent James had when he was nervous. I remained silent, moving away from the door. James's vague warnings about his family were always emphatic. Now, facing them, my instinct screamed, "Caution." The knock came again, more insistent. "Eliza, I'm Robert Mendoza, James's older brother. These are my brothers, and Philip, and Oiga. We're here about the property." Of course they were, not for James, not to meet the woman his brother loved for 10 years. They were there for the house that had suddenly become worth millions. I looked at the laptop on the table. The answers I sought might be there, not with strangers on the porch. Ignoring the increasingly aggressive knocking, I went to the table and typed the password. Insert date of first meeting, e.g. 10/1996. Hope. The screen came to life, opening a folder named For Eliza. Inside were hundreds of video files, each chronologically dated, starting the day after the funeral and extending for a whole year into the future. With trembling hands, I clicked on the first one. James's face filled the screen, not the pale, drawn face from his final days in the hospital, but healthy, full of life, clearly recorded months earlier. "Hello, my love." He smiled that crooked way that always melted me. "If you're watching this, it means I'm gone, and you came to the Nook, despite my years of begging you not to. I should have guessed you wouldn't resist, especially after Ramirez told you about the house." A lump formed in my throat. Even now, he knew me so well. "I recorded a video for every day of your first year without me. A year of companionship while you process the grief. A year of explaining everything I should have told you while I was alive." He briefly looked down, then looked back at me with determination. "Starting with the reason I bought back the house I swore never to set foot in again." Tell me whether you have parents, grandparents, or older family members who deserve more respect than they currently receive from their families. Alternatively, tell me if you yourself are going through a situation in which you're not appreciated as much as you truly deserve. Outside, the knock-in had stopped. Through the window, I saw the men returning to the SUV, taking out papers, conversing with severe expressions. James continued, 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with a cerebral aneurysm, a ticking time bomb I inherited from my father. Doctors gave me the 2 to 5 years. I chose not to tell you Clara, and I didn't want pity, and I didn't want our final years to be lived under the shadow of death. His eyes softened. I wanted to live fully with you until the end, not die slowly in front of you. Shock and anger flooded me. He hid the diagnosis. He made medical decisions without me. He denied me the opportunity to prepare, to consciously value our final moments. I know you're angry right now, he said, as if reading my thoughts. You have every right, but I hope you understand I made that decision out of love, not cowardice. The men outside were making calls, walking around the driveway with the frustrated energy of a denied entitlement. When I received my diagnosis, I decided to use the remaining time to create something meaningful for you. You've always loved yin orchids. You always talked about having a space just for yourself to grow them someday. So I found the last place anyone would expect me to go, the house I left at Reconnecting, swearing never to return. He leaned toward the camera. What my brothers don't know is that I legally bought the house from my father before he died. The old man was quite bankrupt. After years of gambling and drinking, he sold it to me for a fraction of the value, desperate for money, making me swear not to tell my brothers who still thought they would inherit it someday. That explained the legal challenge. They believed they had rights to a property James had legitimately purchased. The house was in ruins when I bought it, Eliza, just like it was in my childhood. But this time I had the resources to transform it. Every business trip over the past 4 years, I was here supervising renovations, building something for us. Outside, the brothers were approaching the door again. This time, Robert was holding a document against the window for me to see, some kind of court order. My brothers will come for it, James continued in the video, his expression hardening. They never wanted the house until last year when the developer started the resort project. Suddenly, the worthless property they mocked me for buying became a gold mine. They'll try anything to take it from you. One of the brothers was on the phone again, his expression triumphant as he hung up. In the bottom drawer of this table, there's a blue folder with all the legal documents you need. The house is unquestionably yours. I made sure of it. James's face softened. But Eliza, whether you keep it or sell it is entirely your choice. I built this place for you, filled it with beauty for you, but I don't want it to become a burden. A Met police car was coming up the driveway. The brothers watched its approach with satisfied expressions. One last thing, James said. In the cat greenhouse behind the house, you'll find the collection of rare orchids I spent years cultivating. The team I hired will continue to care for them, whether you are here or not. They are my last gift to you, along with the means to appreciate them. The video ended, freezing on James's smiling face, as the knock on the door resumed, more authoritative. Mrs. Eliza, State Police. We need you to open the door, please. With a deep sigh, I closed the laptop, took the blue folder from the drawer, and went to face whatever came next. As I reached for the doorknob, my cell phone rang. Clara, our daughter, calling from college. I hesitated, then answered. Clara, now is not a good time. Mom. Her voice was strained with irritation. Why didn't you tell me about Dad's house or the developer's proposal? The uncles just called me, offering a fair settlement if I helped them contest the will. What the heck is going on? So they had already contacted my daughter. That realization ignited something protective and fierce inside me. They weren't just coming for me. They were trying to manipulate my grieving daughter. I'll explain everything later, I promised, watching the police officer converse with the brothers. But Clara, don't sign anything. Don't accept anything. Those men are not our friends. Mom, if there's money involved, This isn't about money, I interrupted, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. It's about what your father wanted. Please, trust me. After a moment of silence, she sighed. Okay, but call me as soon as you can. I hung up and opened the door to face a young police officer, flanked by the three Mendozas, whose expressions ranged from smug to openly hostile. Mrs. Eliza, I'm Officer Castillo. These gentlemen have a court order requesting an inspection of the property as part of an ongoing inheritance dispute. I smiled calmly, channeling the strength James always admired in me. Of course, officer, but first, I think you should see this. I handed him the blue folder containing James's documentation. My husband anticipated this exact situation, and Robert stepped forward with a dismissive gesture. Family disputes are complicated, officer. My sister-in-law is understandably emotional and confused. Actually, I interrupted, I'm neither emotional nor confused. I'm a widow on a property that legally belongs to me, facing three strangers who happen to share my late husband's DNA. I turned to the officer, and I would appreciate it if you would review these documents before allowing anyone onto my property. The officer took the folder, his expression neutral, as he began to examine the contents. The Mendoza brothers exchanged glances, their confidence visibly wavering. I thought of James's video, the secret he kept to spare. Clara, and me unnecessary suffering, the magnificent gift he created in his final years. Whatever game his brothers were playing, I was determined not to lose the last tangible expression of my husband's love without a fight. The officer looked up from the documents. His expression changed. These appear to be in order, ma'am. A clear transfer of each to that deed. Notarized statements certify bank records of the original purchase. He turned to the brothers. Gentlemen, I see no reason to force an inspection today. This appears to be a matter for the civil courts. Robert's face flushed with anger. This is absurd. That woman has no right. That woman, I interrupted calmly, is James Mendoza's wife, and I have every right to be here. As the brothers reluctantly retreated to their SUV, followed by the apologetic officer, I felt a strange mixture of loss and discovery. The husband I thought I knew completely had kept secrets, some painful, others breathtakingly beautiful. Now I faced a choice: retreat to the safety of my previous life, or immerse myself completely in this unexpected legacy and the battle that came with it. I closed the door, returned to the table, and reopened the laptop. Tomorrow's video was waiting for me, and with it, more parts of the man I loved and was only now beginning to fully understand. Outside, the Mendoza brothers might have lost this skirmish, but their expressions upon leaving made one thing clear. The war for Kit, the Parrots' Nook, had just begun. I spent that night in James's house, or rather DR's house, surrounded by the evidence of his secret labor of love. Sleep completely evaded me, my mind buzzing with revelations. The fatal illness he concealed, the transformed house, his brother's determination to claim it, and the hundreds of video messages waiting for me on the laptop. At dawn, I explored the property properly for the first time. The main house was a masterpiece of renovation, blending original rustic elements with modern comfort. Every room reflected careful consideration of my tastes, from the library stocked with first editions of my favorite books, to the reading nook overlooking the garden, perfect for fall night mornings. But it was the greenhouse that truly took my breath away. As James promised in the video, a stunning collection of orchids occupied the glass-enclosed space. Some so rare I had only seen them in specialized books. A nearly impossible-to-find blue Cattleya walkeriana bloomed proudly as the queen of the place. "Good morning, ma'am." The voice startled me. A middle-aged woman appeared among the plants, holding a spray bottle. "I'm Teresa. Your husband hired me to take care of the orchids." "Eliza Mendoza," I replied, extending my hand. "Though I suspect you already knew." She smiled kindly. "Mr. James had spoke of you often during his visits. He said you had a special touch with plants that he could never have. Did you know my husband well?" Teresa hesitated. As well as he allowed anyone to know him, I suppose. He was here at least once a month for the last 4 years, personally supervising everything. That sounded like James, methodical, attentive to detail, always preferring to do things himself rather than delegate. The blue cattleya over there, Teresa continued, pointing to the orchid I had admired. He spent almost 2 years looking for it. He said it reminded him of one you once saw at a show and never forgot. My heart squeezed. The orchid show in the San Francisco, 10 years ago. I had commented on that flower only once, and James remembered. Did he ever mention anything about his health? I asked hesitantly. A shadow crossed Teresa's face. Not directly, but in the last 6 months, he pushed himself harder. He worked for hours like a man with an expiration date. The confirmation hit me, but it also explained the hurried quality I sensed in James during his final months. I attributed it to work stress, never imagining he was creating all of this while knowing his time was limited. His brothers were here yesterday, they commented, carefully observing her reaction. Her face hardened. They started circling as soon as a mountain resort announced the project, suddenly very interested in the family home they hadn't visited in decades. She adjusted the irrigation system before continuing. What can I tell you about them? Robert is the oldest. He has a cash investment firm in New York City. He always treated James as if he were doing him a favor by acknowledging him. Philip is the middle one, a lawyer, good with words. Gus is the youngest, always in Robert's shadow. She shook her head. When James returned to buy the property, they mocked him for wasting money on a hole in the middle of nowhere, until the resort started planning. This fit the fragments James shared over the years, his difficult childhood, his escape to college, his reluctance to discuss his family. They'll be back, I said, more to myself than to Teresa. For sure, she nodded. But Mr. James prepared for that. He was always thinking several steps ahead. Back in the house, I forced myself to eat something before opening the laptop for the day's video. James appeared, sitting in what I now recognized as the house's Ket's library. Good morning, my love. I hope you slept well in our new home. He smiled that crooked smile I missed with a physical ache. Today I want to show you something special. The camera moved as he walked through the house, down a hallway I hadn't explored, stopping at a locked door. This room is just for you. The key is in the first drawer of the nightstand, the antique silver one with the orchid engraving. I paused the video, went to the master bedroom, and found the key exactly where he described. Following James's path in the video, I located the discreet door at the end of the east wing. The key turned smoothly. I pushed the door open and caught my breath. A fully equipped art studio filled the large corner room, bathed in perfect light from floor to ceiling windows. Easels, canvases, paints, brushes, everything an artist could desire, arranged with loving precision. I hadn't painted in 15 years. After art school, I abandoned my artistic dreams to teach literature, to support us while James built his career, to raise Clara. Over the years, someday became a distant dream, then a bittersweet memory of a path not taken. The video continued, James's voice bringing me back to the laptop I had carried with me. You gave up so many things for us, Eliza. Your painting was the first sacrifice. Even though you never complained, I always promised myself I would give it back to you someday. Tears blurred my vision as I inspected the studio, the professional materials, the reference books organized on the shelves, the windows oriented to capture the perfect light. There's something else, James continued. Check the closet underneath the window bench. I walked toward the cushioned bench near the window overlooking the garden, now golden in the morning light. Beneath it, recessed into the wall, was a closet I might have missed if I hadn't been told to look for it. Inside was a flat archival box. With trembling hands, I lifted the lid and fell to my knees in shock. My paintings. Dozens of them. All the work I created in college, pieces I thought had been lost in our moves over the years. James had preserved them, protected them, kept them for 15 years, until he could return them to me in this perfect space. On top was a small canvas I recognized immediately, my final project before graduating, a self-portrait of a young woman looking to the future with eyes bright with possibility. James had asked to keep it the day I finished it. Attached was a handwritten note. She's still there, Eliza, the woman who painted with such passion and vision. I gave you the space. The rest is up to you. I pressed the note against my chest, overwhelmed by love and loss in equal measure. James had seen me, truly seen me, in ways I hadn't allowed myself to be seen in years. The sound of vehicles on the gravel yanked me out of that emotional moment. From the studio window, I saw two SUVs approaching, the familiar black one belonging to the Mendoza brothers, and behind it, a silver one I recognized instantly. Clara had arrived, and by the way she confidently stepped out of her SUV and walked toward her uncle's, it seemed they had already begun to work on her. My daughter, James's daughter, with her father's dark hair and my stubbornness, was smiling and shaking hands with the uncles she had never met before. Any fragile peace I found in James's posthumous gifts evaporated at this new complication. The battle for kin, the Parrots' Nook, had just become much more personal. I watched through the window as Clara exchanged friendly greetings with her uncles, her body language open and receptive. At Aunt 21, our daughter had her father's analytical mind and my determination, but she lacked James's patience and my caution. She was always quick to form opinions, slow to revise them. My cell phone vibrated with a message from her. Just arrived with Uncle Robert and the others. Coming in now, need to talk. Uncle Robert. They had known each other for less than a day, and she was already claiming a family connection. I put James's note in my pocket, closed the studio, and went to face this new alliance. They walked in without knocking, Clara using the familiarity of a daughter, the brothers following her like wolves behind an unsuspecting guide. Mom. Clara hugged me briefly, then pulled back, her eyes scanning the impressive living room. This place is incredible. Why did Dad never tell us about it? Before I could answer, Robert stepped forward, his resemblance to James painfully sharp. Eliza, I think we started on the wrong foot yesterday. We were surprised by your sudden arrival, just as you were by ours. His conciliatory tone didn't match the calculating look in his eyes. Beside him, Philip and Gus maintained carefully neutral expressions, although Philip held a leather folder that undoubtedly contained legal documents. Clara, I said, ignoring Robert entirely, I thought we agreed you wouldn't get involved with your father's brothers until we talked. She blushed slightly. They called again earlier today with a very reasonable proposal. I thought I should at least hear them out in person. Her chin lifted defiantly. Besides, they are my family too. Family you didn't know existed until yesterday, I gently reminded her. Only because Dad kept them away from us, she retorted. Just like he hid this incredible place. Don't you think it's weird? What else was he hiding? The question uncomfortably approached the revelations in James's videos. Your father had complicated relationships with his brothers, I said carefully. He had reasons for the distance he kept. Robert made a dismissive gesture. Ancient history. Brothers fight, especially in difficult families like ours. What matters now is moving forward together. Exactly. Clara nodded with the seriousness of someone who believed she was being perfectly reasonable. Uncle Robert explained everything to me. This house has been in the Yantia Mendoza family for generations. Dad bought it from Grandpa Mendoza, but it was always meant to be shared among the brothers eventually. I suppressed a sigh. They had been working on her for less than a day, and she was already repeating their version of events. And the sudden interest in the property has nothing to do with the luxury resort being built next door? I asked softly. Philip stepped forward, opening his folder. The real estate situation is just one aspect of the complex legal picture. We have prepared a fair settlement offer that honors James's wishes while acknowledging the Mendoza family's historical right to the property. We are prepared to be very generous, Robert added, placing a paternal hand on Clara's shoulder. A third for you, Eliza, a third for Clara, and a third divided among us, the brothers. Everyone wins. Clara looked at me expectantly, clearly already convinced by the proposal. It makes sense, Mom. We don't need this huge place. We could sell everything, keep donated millions, and Dad's family stays united. Your father specifically left this property for Me, I said, looking at Robert intently. Not for you, not for his brothers. Out of confusion and misplaced sentimentality, Robert countered smoothly. James wasn't thinking clearly in his final years. A flash of anger burned through me. My husband was perfectly lucid until the day he died. Then why all the secrecy? Gus spoke for the first time, his voice softer than his brother's, but no less sharp. Why hide the property purchase from his wife and daughter? Why the elaborate arrangements with the lawyer? Those aren't the actions of a rationally thinking man. I thought of the videos, the renovated house, the art studio, every element meticulously planned as a final gift. None of it suggested confusion or impaired judgment. Mom, Clara said, her voice softer now, I know it's hard. Dad left us, and now we're discovering all these secrets. But this proposal makes financial sense. We would both be secure for the rest of our lives. The door opened behind them, and Teresa appeared, her face worried. Is everything all right, Mrs. Eliza? I saw the SUVs arrive. The brothers turned, visibly irritated by the interruption. Robert narrowed his eyes. This is a family matter. Teresa is my employee, I said firmly. She's welcome in my house. Actually, Philip interjected, her employment status is among the disputed assets pending resolution of our legal claim. Teresa did not back down. Mr. James personally hired me. He made me promise to look after the place and Mrs. Eliza if anything happened to him. We'll review all employee contracts, Robert said dismissively. I'd heard enough. I think it's time for all of you to leave. I looked directly at the brothers, then softened my gaze as I turned to Clara. Except you, of course. You're always welcome. You're not even going to consider their offer? Clara asked incredulously. I will review any written proposal with my own attorney, I replied, but I will not be pressured in my own home. Robert's conciliatory mask dropped, revealing the ruthless businessman underneath. This property is worth tens of millions with the resort project. We can do this amicably, or we can make things very difficult. Is that a threat? I asked, calmer than I felt. A reality check, he corrected. You're a university professor facing a legal battle against adversaries with significantly greater resources. James may have had good intentions, but he put you in an untenable position. I thought of the blue folder with his meticulous documentation, the videos showing James's lucid planning, the property representing his final act of love. I think my husband knew exactly what he was doing, I said calmly. Now please leave. Clara, you are welcome to stay for lunch if you like. She looked torn, glancing between me and her newfound uncles. I think I'll go with them for now. We have more to discuss. She kissed my cheek quickly. Think about the offer, Mom, please. I watched them leave, a sense of emptiness expanding in my chest. In just hours, my daughter had been drawn into the orbit of men James spent his entire life avoiding. Teresa waited until the SUVs disappeared down the driveway before speaking. Mrs. Eliza, there's something you should know, something your husband asked me not to mention unless it was absolutely necessary. I turned to her, mentally exhausted but forcing myself to pay attention. What is it? It's about the true extent of the property and what's really hidden here. She gestured toward the greenhouse. We'd better walk. Some things shouldn't be discussed inside the house, where walls might have ears. As I followed her through the garden, the morning sun illuminated the beautiful property my husband had secretly created. Whatever revelation awaited me, I was sure of one thing. James had anticipated this battle, perhaps even Clara's vulnerability to his brother's manipulation. The question was whether he had prepared me enough to win a fight I never knew was coming. Teresa led me past the main greenhouse toward a tool shed I hadn't yet explored. Unlike the perfectly renovated structures on the rest of the property, this building retained its original rustic appearance, deliberately unimproved to seem unimportant. Your husband was a careful man, Teresa said, holding up an old iron key. After his brother's first visit last year, he became even more cautious. They visited before? James never mentioned that. Teresa nodded gravely. They showed up unannounced as soon as they heard about the resort project. Your husband was here supervising the construction of the art studio. They didn't recognize him at first. He had grown his beard out for the treatment. The casual mention of James's treatment hit me like a wave of renewed grief. While I was innocently teaching literature classes, my husband was here, ill, creating this sanctuary while fending off his predatory brothers. What happened? He watched them from a distance, then left without revealing himself. That night, he made changes to the property plans, starting with this. Teresa opened the shed door. The door revealed a common interior, gardening tools, equipment, dust particles dancing in beams of light, entering through cracks in the walls. Teresa moved confidently toward the far corner, pushing aside several stacked boxes to expose a trap door recessed into the concrete floor. Your husband installed this entrance last winter. The workers thought they were building a sign cellar. She pulled the heavy door upwards, revealing a sturdy staircase descending into darkness. After you. Curiosity overriding apprehension, I followed Teresa down the stairs. At the bottom, she flipped a switch and lights came on, revealing a concrete tunnel stretching out before us. What is this place? Your husband called it the vault. I call it genius. The tunnel extended for about 100 feet before opening into a large room filled with files, a table with computer equipment, and walls covered with maps and documents. Welcome to James's war room, Teresa said with a touch of pride. Everything he compiled about his brothers, their businesses, and the true value of the Parrots' Nook. I walked toward the nearest wall, where a detailed map showed not only the property, but the surrounding area for miles. Red markings indicated the locations of the resort project with handwritten annotations about values, construction phases, and real estate impact. I don't understand, I said, turning to Teresa. James knew about the resort project. Not at first. He bought this place to renovate it for you, pure and simple. But about 2 years ago, when Hand Mountain Resort began preliminary studies, he hired a real estate consultant to assess the impact on the Nook. Teresa pointed to the map. They discovered something the developer was trying to keep secret until all land purchases were finalized. The full project is 3 times larger than they publicly announced. I studied the map more carefully, noticing how the markings extended far beyond the area the press had disclosed. Phase 2 of the resort will include a golf course that will require part of the property adjacent to ours, Teresa continued. They have already purchased almost all the necessary land, except, the Parrots' Nook, I concluded, beginning to understand. Your husband verified with 3 independent specialists. The strategic position of this property can completely block the planned expansion. Without it, the project loses half its projected value. So, the property is even more valuable than his brothers imagine. Exponentially, but that's not all. Teresa moved toward a file cabinet, pulling out a thick folder. James documented decades of questionable business practices by the 3 brothers: tax evasion, insider trading, misappropriation of client funds, enough evidence to professionally ruin them if it came to light. I leafed through the meticulous documentation, recognizing James's exhaustive approach to problem solving. Email printouts, financial records, affidavits from former employees. He had built an airtight case against his brothers. Why would he compile all this? Protection! Teresa sat down at the table, gesturing for me to take the other chair. He knew they would come for the house as soon as he was gone. He wanted you to have ammunition. I thought of Robert's smug confidence, Philip's legal maneuvers, their quick work to win over Clara. He anticipated everything. Not everything, Teresa said calmly. He didn't expect them to get to your daughter so quickly. The memory of Clara's apparent betrayal stung. They're manipulating her with half-truths and promises of wealth, playing on her grief. Teresa nodded. She lost her father. Suddenly, they are offering her a connection to him through shared blood and history. A powerful draw for a grieving young woman. She was right. Clara was always a daddy's girl, sharing James's analytical mind and love for puzzles. His death left her adrift, vulnerable to anyone offering a connection to him. What do I do now? I asked, almost to myself. That depends on what you want, Teresa replied. You could sell everything and walk away rich, but perhaps forever estranged from your daughter. You could fight the brothers legally using this evidence, which might win the battle but worsen the family wounds. Or what? You could do what your husband always did, think 3 steps ahead, and find the path no one expects. I considered that as I continued to examine the war room. On the table was a framed photograph I had never seen before. Teenage James, standing proudly next to an award-winning orchid, his face illuminated by an innocent joy I had rarely glimpsed in the man I married. That was the first cattleya he ever grew, Teresa said, noting my focus on the photo. The only positive thing in his childhood here. His brothers destroyed it when James was away at school, just to hurt him. Another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. James's support for my love of flowers and art, despite having no personal interest in them. The magnificent greenhouse and studio were not just gifts, they were the recovery of something precious his brothers had stolen from him. I picked up the photograph, a plan beginning to form in my mind. Teresa, does the laptop with James's videos work down here? She nodded. There's a secure network throughout the property. Your husband made sure of that. Excellent. I need to watch the next videos ahead of schedule. Then I want you to schedule a meeting for me. With whom? First, my daughter alone away from her uncle's influence. Then my lawyer. And finally, I looked at the wall of evidence James had compiled against his brothers. I think I'd like to speak with the executives of Mountain Resort. Teresa smiled for the first time since we entered the hidden bunker. You're planning something your husband would approve of. I'm planning something worthy of the man who loved me enough to create all of this, I corrected, a new determination firming my voice. And I'm going to need your help. Whatever you need, Mrs. Eliza, Teresa promised. Your husband gave me a second chance when no one else would. I owe him everything, and by extension, I owe it to you. This was one more facet of James I didn't know, his quiet generosity extending beyond our immediate family, changing lives I had never heard of. As we left the bunker, carefully hiding the entrance again, I felt a strange sense of connection to my late husband. Not the grief that had dominated the past weeks, but a partnership that somehow continued beyond death. He had left me not just a property and material security, but tools and knowledge to forge my own path. The Galo Mendoza brothers believed they were facing a naive widow who was no match for them. They had no idea what was coming. The next 12 or 8 hours passed in a blur of activity fueled by determination and the growing clarity of my plan. I watched an entire week of James's videos in a single night, each one revealing more of his strategy and the depth of his foresight. They will try to divide and conquer, he warned in one recording, as if speaking directly about my current situation. Robert will be the friendly face, Philip the legal threat, Gus the silent observer, and they will target Clara. She is the easiest path to destabilize your position. In another video, he showed documents from the developer he had obtained through contacts in the city hall. Mountain Resort is desperate to keep Phase 2 of the project secret until they secure all the necessary land. If they discover we know about the golf course before they attempt to buy us out, the negotiation value triples. Armed with James's insights and my own growing understanding, I met Clara at a coffee shop in the city, far from the influence of the Mendoza brothers and the emotional pull of the sanctuary James created. She arrived content, minutes late, already defensive before she even sat down. I can't stay long. Uncle Robert is taking me to meet some investors this afternoon. Uncle Robert, I repeated softly, you've become very close in 3 days. She blushed. They've been kind and welcoming, which is more than I can say for you. You're treating Dad's family like enemies. I sipped my coffee, choosing my next words carefully. Do you remember that narrative theory class you loved in your first semester about how the same story changes completely depending on who tells it? What does that have to do with our situation? You've only heard their version of this story. I'm asking you to consider that there might be another perspective, your father's. Dad's dead, she said sharply, pain flashing in her face, and he obviously didn't trust us enough to tell us about this place while he was alive. I reached into my bag and pulled out a tablet. He actually left something for both of us. What is this? Your father made videos, Clara, hundreds of them. messages to guide me, to guide us after he was gone. I turned the tablet around, cueing the video James had labeled, "For Clara when she needs it." Her face went pale. "He made videos." "He knew he was dying," I said gently, finally sharing the truth. "He was diagnosed 3 years ago with a cerebral aneurysm. He chose not to tell us. He wanted to spare us watching him wither. That's impossible. He would have told me." But uncertainty was already creeping into her voice. "Watch the video, Clara. Listen to him." With trembling fingers, she pressed play. James's face appeared, healthy, vibrant, his eyes crinkling with that smile that was so characteristic of him. "Hello, my brilliant girl. If you're watching this, then I'm gone, and knowing you, you're probably angry about all the secrets I kept." He laughed softly. "You never liked being kept in the dark about anything, even as a child." Tears welled up in Clara's eyes as her father continued. "I should have told you I was sick. I should have given you time to prepare, to ask all those questions you're so good at forming. But I was selfish. I wanted our last years together to be normal, not overshadowed by my diagnosis. I hope someday you can forgive me for that choice." James leaned toward the camera. "But there is something else you need to know, something about my brothers I never shared with you. Our falling out wasn't some petty family squabble, Clara. They defrauded me out of my share of the inheritance when I was 10. They used my name on false documents while I was away at college. When I found out and threatened to expose them, they threatened to implicate me as a willing accomplice." Clara's hand covered her mouth, her eyes fixed on the screen. "I left via Lake Tahoe, moved to Denver, met your mother, built a life, raised you. That was more than enough." His expression hardened. "But my brothers never changed. Whatever they are telling you now, remember this. Dads, they want control of the family property, not out of sentiment, but out of pure-ass greed. And they will use anyone, including my daughter, to get it." The video ended, freezing on James's worried face. Clara remained motionless, tears silently streaming down her cheeks. "He was protecting us," she finally whispered. "All this time, from more than just his illness," I confirmed gently. "Your uncles are not the family connection they pretend to be. They are opportunists who see you as the easiest path to what they want." She wiped her tears, anger replacing grief in her expression. "They've been lying to me, haven't they? About everything but the fact that the house is worth millions. That part is true, but they didn't tell you about the full resort project or why the property is so crucial to the developer's plans." Understanding illuminated her eyes. "They're trying to scam us." "Us," I repeated, feeling hope. "Does that mean you're back on my side, Mom?" "I was never off your side, honey." She looked down, ashamed. "I just wanted to feel connected to Dad through his family. They had stories about him as a kid, photos I'd never seen." "I understand," I assured her, reaching my hand across the table to squeeze hers. "Grief makes us vulnerable in ways we can't foresee, but now we need to be smarter than them. Together." Clara straightened up, her expression changing from devastation to determination, so much like James that my heart ached. "What's the plan?" I smiled, feeling the first real sense of confidence since this ordeal began. "First, we meet with my lawyer tonight. Not the family lawyer your uncles want to use, but someone recommended by Mr. Ramirez. Then tomorrow we have an appointment with Ship Mountain Resort." "Why?" "Because knowledge is power, and we now know something your uncles don't. Exactly how much the property is really worth to the developer." I showed her the documents from James's war room. "They think they are dealing with an uninformed widow and a naive niece. It's time to show them exactly who they're up against." For the first time since James's death, Clara laughed, a sound of genuine amusement. "Dad always said you were the smartest person he knew, that beneath that quiet literature professor was a strategist who could outmaneuver anyone if properly motivated." "He really said that?" I asked, surprised. "All the time." She smiled, wiping away the last tears. "He also said the biggest mistake anyone could make was to underestimate Eliza Mendoza." As we left the coffee shop together, I felt a shift in the dynamic of this battle. The Aunt Mendoza's brothers, unintentionally, had united us instead of dividing us. They had no idea that their apparent initial success with Clara had only set the stage for their final defeat. Later that night, with Clara by my side, I presented my complete plan to the lawyer James had recommended for this exact scenario. His expression changed from professional interest to unconcealed admiration as he grasped the full scope of what I was proposing. "Mrs. Mendoza," he finally said, "your husband told me you would surprise me with your strategic thinking. He was right." "My husband," I replied, "was right about many things, including his belief in my ability not only to survive his death, but to emerge stronger from the crucible of grief and betrayal." The Mendoza brothers arrived at the Parrots' Nook exactly when I expected, at 10 a.m. sharp, 3 days after my meeting with Clara. Their black SUV rolled up the driveway with the confidence of men who believe victory was just a formality. Behind them followed a silver sedan I didn't recognize, likely their lawyer or financial consultant. I watched from the studio window, dressed not in the casual clothes they had seen previously, but in a tailored suit I had bought specifically for this meeting. Appearances matter when orchestrating a turnaround, and I intended to present myself not as a grieving widow, but as the formidable adversary James always knew I was. "They're here," I advised Clara, who appeared from the library looking equally rational in a navy blue dress, her father's watch, one of her most prized possessions, prominently displayed on her wrist. "Ready?" she asked, nervousness and determination conflicting in her expression. "Completely." I squeezed her hand. "Remember, let them corner themselves first." Teresa appeared. "The others have arrived through the back entrance. They're ready in the dining room as you requested." I nodded my thanks. Perfect timing. The doorbell rang, and Teresa went to answer it with the practiced deference of someone who knew her role in this carefully choreographed performance. "Good morning, gentlemen," I heard her greet them. "Mrs. Eliza and Clara are waiting this way, please." They entered with the ease of men accustomed to controlling environments. Robert led, followed by Philip with his ever-present legal folder, and Gus trailing behind. Behind them walked a gray-haired man in an expensive suit who radiated corporate authority. "Eliza," Robert nodded, his smile not reaching his eyes. "We appreciate you agreeing to this meeting. This is Mr. Carlos Moreno, Chief Financial Officer of GNT Investments. We thought it would be productive to have a specialist join our discussion about the property's potential." So they had brought in a financial executive to intimidate me with technical jargon and market valuations. Predictable. "How considerate," I replied graciously. "I've prepared the dining room for our meeting. Let's go." I led them through the house, noting their evaluating glances at the renovations James had completed. In the formal dining room, a large table had been set with documents at each place, water bottles and coffee, the picture of professional preparation. "Please, have a seat," I gestured. "I believe we have much to discuss." As they settled in, expressions of confidence still firmly in place, I remained standing at the head of the table. "Before we begin," I said, "I want to thank you for the previous proposal. It was educational." Robert's smile widened, clearly interpreting my comment as their success. "We're pleased you've had time to consider our offer. With Mr. Moreno's expertise, we can discuss the most advantageous arrangement for dividing the property's assets." "Yes, Division," I said, picking up a remote control from the table. "It's precisely what I'd like to discuss." I pressed a button, and a hidden screen dropped from the ceiling at the end of the room. The brothers exchanged surprised glances, clearly not expecting this level of preparation. "If you would direct your attention to the presentation," I continued, clicking the remote again. A detailed map of the Parrots' Nook appeared on the screen, showing the property boundaries, topographical features, and its position relative to the surroundings. "This is the complete survey of the Parrots' Nook," I explained. "The full 60 acres, not just the 5 acres mentioned in your proposal." Philip shifted uncomfortably. "The western portion is an undevelopable preservation area. We excluded it for simplicity's sake." "How thoughtful," I replied with irony, "except for one small detail." Another click of the remote, and the map was overlaid with the full resort project. All phases, including the golf course, mountain resort, had been keeping secret. Carlos Moreno straightened in his chair, his professional mask slipping as he leaned forward to study the projection with sudden interest. As you can see, I continued calmly, Phase 2 of the project extends predominantly over the western portion of our property. The acres you so generously offered to exclude from our fair division. Robert's face flushed. Those projects are just speculation. Gentius analysis indicates. Actually, a new voice interrupted as the side door opened. Those projects have been confirmed by White Mountain Resort's own board of directors. The Mendoza brothers spun around in shock as Paul Rivera, the CEO of Mountain Resort, walked into the room, followed by my lawyer and two executives in business suits. "What is this?" Robert demanded, half rising. "This," I replied graciously, "is a meeting about the true value and future of the Parrots Nook. Mr. Rivera has expressed significant interest in the property, particularly after reviewing the complete documentation my husband compiled about the resort project." Carlos Moreno shot a betrayed look at the Mendoza brothers. "You told me you had exclusive negotiating rights for this property." "They don't," my lawyer interjected calmly, placing additional documents on the table. "Mrs. Mendoza holds a clear and unquestionable title to the entire property. The documents the Kenchitas Mendoza gentleman showed you are legally worthless." Robert slammed his hand on the table. "This property has been in the Mendoza family for generations. James had a moral obligations. Clara spoke for the first time, her voice firm, despite her hand gripping her water glass. "Like the moral obligation you had to my father when you defrauded his inheritance, or forged his signature on documents, or threatened to incriminate him if he exposed you." The brothers froze, the color draining from their faces. "What exactly are you talking about?" Carlos Moreno asked, looking increasingly uneasy. "Perhaps this will clarify," I said, nodding to my lawyer, who distributed sealed envelopes to everyone at the table. Copies of the documentation my husband preserved regarding certain transactions involving the Gentes Mendoza family assets. I believe the statute of limitations has expired for some of these issues, but tax authorities might find others quite interesting. Philip opened his envelope, examining the contents with growing alarm. "These are private family matters," he stammered, "completely irrelevant to the current discussion." "On the contrary," I countered, finally taking my seat at the head of the table, "they establish a pattern of fraudulent behavior that directly impacts your credibility in these negotiations, behavior that continued when you deliberately misled Mr. Moreno about your position to negotiate this property." The room fell silent as the Mendoza brothers realized the totality of their exposure. James had documented everything, their historical crimes against him, their recent manipulations, their attempts to appropriate valuable assets while appearing generous. "What do you want, Eliza?" Robert finally asked, his facade of confidence crumbling. "I want you to leave the Parrots Nook and never come back," I stated simply. "I want you to cease all attempts to contest my ownership or manipulate my daughter. In exchange, these documents will remain private." Carlos Moreno stood up abruptly. "I believe my involvement in this matter was based on incomplete and potentially fraudulent information. If you'll excuse me, Mrs. Mendoza, I will contact you directly for any future discussions." He shot a look of contempt at the brothers before leaving. Robert's face turned red as he watched his ally depart. "You have no idea what you're doing, Eliza. The development costs for the western area are prohibitive. The logistics alone..." "Actually," and Paul Rivera interjected, "Mountain Resort has developed new construction methods specifically suited for this type of terrain. We are prepared to make Mrs. Mendoza an offer that recognizes both the challenges and the exceptional potential of this property." As the meeting continued, transforming from the Mendoza brothers' planned takeover into my carefully orchestrated counteroffensive, I caught Clara's eye across the table. Her slight smile conveyed everything: pride, vindication, and the bittersweet recognition that James had prepared us for this moment, even from beyond the grave. When the Mendoza brothers left 2 hours later, defeated, exposed, legally bound by the agreement my lawyer had prepared in advance. The future of, the Parrots Nook was secured exactly as James had envisioned, not divided among greedy relatives, not sold to the highest bidder, but preserved as a legacy for the family he had chosen and loved, Clara and me. As their vehicles disappeared down the driveway, Teresa appeared at my signature. "Your husband would be proud," she said calmly. "You outmaneuvered them exactly as he believed you would." I watched the dust settle on the path, a strange mix of emotions washing over me. Triumph mingled with grief, strength emerging from vulnerability. "We're not done yet," I replied, thinking of the videos still waiting on James's laptop, of the future stretching out before us. This was only the first battle, but it was one we won decisively, using the weapons James had meticulously prepared and the strength he always saw in me, even when I couldn't see it in myself. The weeks following the Cat Mendoza brothers' defeat passed in a blur of practical matters, finalizing our settlement documents, meetings with Shannon Mountain Resort, to structure a mutually beneficial agreement that would preserve the most sensitive part of the property, and a careful inventory of everything James had created at the Parrots Nook. Clara stayed with me during this period, her initial resentment over her father's secrets transforming into an appreciation for his foresight. We established a routine of watching his daily videos together each morning, both finding comfort and guidance in his posthumous presence. "Did you have any idea?" Clara asked one evening as we sat on the porch watching the sunset. "Any suspicion that Dad was sick or planning all this?" I considered the question carefully, searching my memories for missadtions. There were small things that make sense in retrospect. His insistence on updating our legal documents 3 years ago, the way he would sometimes look at us during dinner, almost memorizing our faces, his sudden interest in photographing ordinary moments. "I just thought he was going through a middle-aged appreciation phase," Clara said, smiling sadly. "In a way he was, only not for the reasons we imagined." I sipped my tea, reflecting. "The biggest change was how he stopped postponing personal things. Your father was always a someday person about personal matters. Someday we'd take that trip to Europe. Someday he'd learn photography. Someday we'd renovate the kitchen. Then suddenly he started doing things instead of just talking about them, creating something lasting." Exactly. I attributed it to him finally feeling secure enough to pursue some dreams. I shook my head, still adjusting to the magnitude of what he had concealed. "I never imagined he was racing against time, creating a legacy because he knew he wouldn't be here to see it bloom." The executives at Mountain Resort were surprised when I outlined my conditions for property access. Instead of selling everything for a single lump sum, as most owners would do, I insisted on an agreement that prioritized environmental preservation, established strict limits on development, and ensured the greenhouse and art studio remained intact. "Mrs. Mendoza," the lead negotiator said, "these terms are highly unusual in the industry." "Then perhaps the industry needs more unusual terms," I countered, channeling James's quiet confidence. "This land is special. It can wait until we agree on responsible methods for developing it." To my surprise, the Paul Rivera, the Share's CEO, was intrigued rather than discouraged by my approach. "Your husband mentioned you majored in literature and arts before becoming a professor," he observed. "He said you would insist on doing it the dad or right and way, not just the lucrative that as way." Another piece of James's planning revealed he had established contacts with selected people in the industry, setting the stage for negotiations he knew would occur after his death. A month after claiming my inheritance, I was in the art studio James had created, sunlight streaming through the windows, illuminating a canvas on the easel. After more than a decade away from painting, I finally picked up the brush again, hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence. The subject for the day waited patiently in the greenhouse, visible through the studio windows. The rare blue orchid James had found because he remembered a casual comment I made years ago. Teresa taught me about orchid cultivation, my fingers gradually regaining the dexterity I thought I had lost forever. Mom, Clara appeared in the doorway, laptop in hand. Today's video is different. I think you should watch it alone. I put down my brush, curious. We had grown accustomed to watching James's daily messages together. Different how? It's specifically labeled for day 130. He titled it, When Eliza Starts Painting Again. She handed me the computer with a gentle smile. He knew you'd eventually come back to this. Alone in the studio, surrounded by the tools of a passion I was rediscovering, I opened the laptop and pressed play. James appeared, sitting in this same room before the art materials had been installed, the space empty except for the magnificent windows. Hello, my love, he began, his smile warming me across time. If you're watching this, you found your way back to art, back to the passion you set aside for our family all those years. I gently touched the screen, tears welling up. I've been thinking a lot about land legacy, he continued. What we leave behind, what marks we make on the world. Most people think of legacy in terms of children, or wealth, or achievements. But there's another kind of legacy, the enablement of sad possibility in those we love. He gestured toward the empty room around him. This space isn't finalized yet, but in my mind, I can see it complete, filled with light and color and your creations. I imagine you at an easel, brush in hand, finally given shape to the visions you've carried inside you for all these years. I looked at the portrait of the orchid on my easel, struck by how closely it aligned with James's imagination. I structured everything to give you freedom, Eliza, he continued. Financial security through the resort agreement, protection from my brother's interference, a beautiful space to create. But what you do with that freedom, that is your legacy to build, not mine to determine. He leaned toward the camera, his expression intense. The house, the greenhouse, the art studio are not the inheritance. They are just the tools. The true inheritance is possibility, the opportunity to become more fully yourself without restriction. I paused the video, overwhelmed by the depth of his understanding. James had known me better than I knew myself. He had seen the sleeping artist still alive inside the professor and mother I had become. When I resumed the video, his expression had softened. I have one request, although it's yours to accept or decline. In the storage closet behind this room, there is a large canvas I commissioned before the diagnosis. It's blank, waiting. When you are ready, truly ready, I hope you will create something for the great room, something that captures not just what you see, but what you want to feel about this place that brought me back to my origins and will lead you to your future. The video ended with his familiar farewell. Until tomorrow, my love. I stayed still for several minutes, processing his words. Then, moved by an impulse, I went to the storage closet and found exactly what he had described. A huge, custom-made blank canvas for the main wall in the great room, the perfect size to create a centerpiece for the heart of the house. In the weeks that followed, as autumn painted the landscape in golden hues, I made countless sketches, trying to capture the essence of the Parrots' Nook and what it represented. None satisfied me until one morning, watching Clara tend to the orchids in the greenhouse, something clicked. The painting gradually took shape, not a traditional landscape, but a blend of real and metaphorical elements. The house, as it now existed in the background, rendered with photographic precision. In the foreground, a series of translucent layers showing what came before, the abandoned property James bought, the family home of his childhood, and beneath it all, the ancient land that had witnessed generations come and go. Uniting these temporal layers were two figures, a woman and a young lady. Their features only subtly suggested, enough to represent both specific and universal journeys. Behind them, almost invisible unless you knew where to look, a third figure, a man with a blue orchid in his hands, offering it to the other two. When the painting was finally complete, Teresa helped me hang it in its designated spot in the great room. Clara stepped back, studying it with tears in her eyes. It's Dad, isn't it? And us. She traced the paths of the figures with her finger in the air. the past, present, and future of this place. Legacy, I said simply, not what is left behind, but what continues forward. That evening, as I watched the sunset from the porch of what was now truly my home, I felt James's presence, not as a ghost or a memory, but as a continuing partnership. He had given me not just a property and material security, but a framework for reinvention, the freedom to discover who Eliza Mendoza could become when she was no longer constrained by circumstances. The resort agreement would provide financial stability forever. The house would evolve according to our stewardship, and I would continue to bring beauty into the world through rediscovered talents, creating my own legacy alongside the one James had so carefully prepared. A few months later, I received an unexpected visitor. The doorbell rang while I was working in the studio. Teresa appeared at the door with a cautious expression on her face. Robert Mendoza is here alone. My body immediately tensed. Does he have any legal documents? Not that I saw. He looks different, less arrogant. He just said he would like a few minutes of your time. I considered refusing, but curiosity won. I'll see him on the porch. Don't invite him in. Robert was thinner than the last time I saw him, the lines around his eyes deeper. He turned when I opened the door, his expression surprisingly humble. Eliza, thank you for seeing me. What can I do for you, Robert? Our agreement was quite clear. I'm not here to contest the agreement. He looked at the property, then back at me. I'm here to apologize. Of all the things I expected, an apology was at the bottom of the list. I crossed my arms, waiting for him to continue. In the last few months, I've done some reflecting about James, about our relationship, about the choices I made. He swallowed. I didn't expect you to win. I should have. James was always the smartest of us. That's not an apology, I observed. You're right, he nodded. I apologize for trying to take this house from you, for trying to manipulate Clara, for all the years I made James's life harder than it needed to be. I looked at him for signs of falseness, but found only exhaustion and possibly genuine remorse. Why now? I have back cancer, he said simply. Stage 4. My prognosis isn't good. It puts things in perspective. The echo of James's illness was impossible to ignore. I'm sorry to hear that. I didn't come for sympathy. I came because my little brother built something beautiful here, and I, in my arrogance and greed, almost destroyed it. He pulled a small packet from his pocket. I found this in our father's belongings. I thought you or Clara might want it. I accepted the packet cautiously. Inside was a faded photograph. 3 boys under a huge tree, the youngest, obviously James, holding a tiny potted orchid. It was the first one he ever grew, Robert explained, before he left the sentence unfinished, guilt visible on his face. I looked at young James in the photo, then at the broken man in front of me. Do you want to come see the greenhouse? I offered, surprising us both. James grew some truly impressive orchids. For a moment, I thought he would refuse. Then, with an almost imperceptible nod, he followed me onto the property he once tried to steal. As we walked among the flowers his brother had cultivated with so much love, I saw Robert the way James must have seen him in the videos. Not a villain to be defeated, but a man tormented by choices he couldn't undo. Forgiveness wouldn't erase the past or change the future, but perhaps it was part of the legacy too, the ability to choose compassion when vengeance would be easier. I'll never know if the ghost of regret that led Robert to my door was genuine or just another calculated act. What I do know is that when he left, something at the Parrots Nook subtly changed, as if a final chapter had closed. That night, I watched James's last video. He smiled at me from the screen, his eyes full of a peace I never noticed when he was alive. This is the end of our daily journey together, my love. A year of messages to guide you through the first months without me, but it's not the end of us. He paused, looking at the camera as if he could really see me. We continue in the decisions you will make, in the love we share with Clara, in the beauty you will create from here on. The house I feared for so long is now yours to transform. The secret I kept has become your gift. The promise I asked you to make, only to later release you from it, has become the path to your future. He smiled one last time, Never forget, Eliza. You were always the true strength between us. Until one day, my love. The screen went dark, and in the silence that followed, I found not just loss, but also possibility. The house James had asked me never to visit had become my home. The secrets he kept transformed into my strength, and the promise he had asked me to make only to later release me from it had become the path to my future. I got up and walked to the large painting in the great room, observing the layers of past, present, and future I had portrayed. James had done more than just leave me a property. He had given me the opportunity to rediscover myself. The house he feared had become the house he loved, and now it was mine to continue transforming, one day at a time. The names and places in this story have been changed to protect the identities of those involved. We do not share this to judge, but in the hope that someone will pause and reflect on how many mothers are silently suffering within their own homes. I truly wonder, if you were in my place, what would you do? Would you choose silence to preserve peace? Or would you dare to confront everything in order to reclaim your voice? I long to hear your thoughts because every story is like a candle that can light the path for someone else. I firmly believe that God always blesses, and that courage leads us toward brighter days. As we close, I leave you with two of the channel's most beloved stories. I'm certain they will surprise and inspire you. Thank you for staying with me until this moment.